Usually when we talk about like a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of total precision.
Right.
It's almost like engineering. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at the screen and says, well, there it is.
Yeah, it's binary. I mean, the bone is broken or it isn't. The evidence is just sitting right there in plain sight,
Yeah.
completely neutral.
Exactly. But then if you look at the health of a company, the financial anatomy of a massive global business, suddenly that x-ray machine, it doesn't work the same way.
No, not at all.
When a company is bleeding money from the inside, the diagnostic landscape is incredibly murky because the break isn't visible, because someone is actively, intelligently trying to hide that jagged line from you.
And that is really the defining characteristic of financial deception.
Hmm.
It is actively fighting back against being discovered.
Right.
It adapts to the diagnostic tools you're using to look for it, which is wild when you really think about it.
It is wild, which actually brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We are welcoming you into an exploration of a hidden professional subculture.
Yeah, the world of professional fraud fighters.
Exactly. We've got a really fascinating stack of source material today from the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, or the ACFE,
Right.
and we're examining their informational framework. And I want to be clear, not just as a boring certification manual, but as a blueprint to understand what it actually takes to defend against financial deception on a global scale.
Because the ACFE texts explicitly describe fraud as, quote, ever-evolving and on the rise.
Right. It's not static.
No, we're looking at a threat that mutates.
Yeah.
So the question for us isn't just what these professionals do, but why their specific, highly multidisciplinary approach is, well, kind of the only effective way to counter a threat that is designed to look like routine business.
Yeah, and okay, let's unpack this a bit, because when I first looked at the breakdown of the Certified Fraud Examiner, the CFE credential, I honestly expected a standard corporate syllabus.
You mean like heavy on calculator proficiency?
Yeah, like spreadsheet auditing, balancing ledgers, that kind of thing. But instead, looking at these sources, it feels less like a corporate training manual and more like we're looking at the syllabus for financial superheroes.
I like that analogy.
I mean, you've got accountants and you've got detectives, but this framework outlines some kind of hybrid professional. You have the analytical mind of an accountant merged directly with the tactical mindset of an investigator.
Well, the scale and complexity of modern fraud really dictate those specific traits.
Really?
Yeah, organizations worldwide rely on CFEs because a single discipline approach it completely fails. The framework we're looking at dictates that a CFE must possess 4 distinct cognitive muscles.
The 4 pillars, let's lay them out, because I think this is where the complexity of the job really becomes apparent to anyone listening.
Okay, so pillar 1 is a deep knowledge of complex financial transactions.
So that's the accounting foundation.
Exactly. Pillar 2 is an understanding of investigative techniques and legal issues.
Which is very different from accounting.
Vastly different. Then pillar 3 is the ability to resolve allegations of fraud.
Notice it says resolve, not just spot.
Right, that's key. And finally, pillar 4 is designing effective anti-fraud programs.
Okay, wait, I want to push back on that a bit.
Sure.
Mostly from the perspective of an average business owner. So say I run a mid-sized logistics company, right? And I suspect money is leaking out the back door.
Okay.
My first instinct isn't to look for a hybrid investigator lawyer. My instinct is just to hire the most thorough, detail-obsessed accountant I can find to just stare at my spreadsheets until the anomaly pops out.
Right, that's what most people would do.
Yeah, so why does this specialized credential insist on dragging all these legal issues and investigative techniques into the mix? Isn't finding the missing money enough?
What's fascinating here is the difference between passive observation and active investigation.
Passive versus active. Yep.
Yeah. Your thorough, detail-obsessed accountant is trained in passive observation. They're looking for mistakes.
Like a misplaced decimal.
Exactly. But a sophisticated fraudster isn't making a mistake. They know the rules of accounting perfectly, and they use those exact rules to construct a completely false reality where the math actually balances perfectly.
Oh, wow. So they're weaponizing the accounting rules.
Yes. The accountant looks at a painted wall and confirms that, yep, the wall is painted. The CFE takes a sledgehammer to the drywall to find the rot hidden underneath.
That is a great way to put it. So the fraudster is using the language of accounting to camouflage the crime.
Always. And this is where that second pillar, the investigative techniques and legal issues, becomes the massive separator.
How so?
Well, let's say your really thorough accountant actually does spot the anomaly. they find the missing money.
Awesome. Problem solved, right?
But what happens next? If they don't know how to legally secure that digital ledger, if they don't understand the chain of custody for evidence, that discovery is entirely useless.
Wait, really? Useless?
Yes, because the fraudster's defense attorney will just get the evidence thrown out in court because it was mishandled.
Ah, so you essentially poison your own well.
Exactly. Which feeds directly into the third pillar in the source material, which is resolving allegations of fraud.
And like you said earlier, that wording is very deliberate. It doesn't say making allegations.
No, it says resolving them, because mechanically, resolving an allegation is an incredibly delicate operation.
I can imagine.
I mean, you have a suspect inside the company, you need to interview them. If you just burst into a room and start making accusations without legally sound evidence,
You're probably going to get sued.
right, you expose the company to defamation lawsuits, wrongful termination suits, or honestly, you just tip off the fraudster so they can go destroy whatever evidence is left.
That makes so much sense. So, resolving the allegation means building an ironclad case that holds up not just in a boardroom, but actually in a court of law.
Yes, you have to prove intent, which is much, much harder than just proving a mathematical error.
It's like the difference between proving someone dropped a vase and proving they threw it on purpose.
Exactly. You need context, you need motive, and a legally sound paper trail.
Okay, so let's say you do all that.
Right. And once you've successfully navigated that absolute minefield, you arrive at the fourth pillar, which is designing effective anti-fraud programs.
So this is the pivot from reactive to proactive.
Yes, you found the vulnerability in the accounting software, you legally removed the threat, and now you have to re-architect the company's internal controls so that specific exploit can never be used again.
You diagnose the disease, you perform the surgery without killing the patient, and then you rewrite their genetic code so they're immune to that specific virus.
That comprehensive life cycle is the absolute core of the CFE framework. It requires human psychology, legal strategy, corporate governance, and just deep financial literacy.
You really can't piecemeal this out to 4 different departments and expect them to communicate effectively, can you?
No, the CFE is the translation layer between the ledger and the law.
Okay, but that raises a massive logistical problem for me, though.
What?
Well, human nature dictates that we study for a test, we pass a certification exam, and then immediately let half the material evaporate from our brains.
True. So true.
And in an environment where the source material repeatedly calls fraud ever-evolving, relying on the knowledge you had the day you passed the test seems like a massive liability.
It's a complete failure of security if you do that.
Yeah.
A static education is a target.
A target.
Yeah, I mean, the moment a textbook is published detailing how a specific type of fraud is committed, the fraudsters have already abandoned that technique and moved on to a new loophole. They are relentless innovators.
Which naturally brings us to the infrastructure the ACFE provides to counter that innovation. Because looking at the sources, they detail a vast fraud resources library that acts as the backbone for these professionals.
Right, we aren't just talking about, like, a yearly newsletter here.
No. They have access to heavy-hitting resources, things like Occupational Fraud 2024, a report to the nations, the Fraud Risk Management Guide, a dedicated Fraud Talk podcast, and real-time dispatches via the ACFE Insights blog.
Think of it as a global threat intelligence feed.
That's a great way to put it.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the ACFE mandates continuing professional education, or CPE, for all its members.
Along with strict recertification requirements, right?
Exactly. And this
Yeah.
isn't just bureaucratic docs checking. It's an active download of the newest criminal methodologies.
Let's look at how that actually functions in practice, though. Take that 2024 report to the nations. It's analyzing thousands of actual real-world fraud cases.
Massive amounts of data.
Yeah. So how does a CFE on the ground use a massive data report like that? Are they just reading it for the statistics?
No, they're reading it for the mechanism. The report breaks down how internal controls are being bypassed today.
Okay.
So 5 years ago, a CFE might have been primarily focused on physical check tampering or, forged signatures.
Old school stuff.
Right. But today, the report might show a massive spike in synthetic identity fraud or deep fake audio being used to authorize wire transfers.
Oh, wow. Deep fake audio.
Yeah. So the CFE reads that report, looks at their own company's wire transfer protocols, and asks, well, if our CEO's voice is cloned tomorrow, do our current controls actually stop the money from leaving the building?
So they're constantly pressure testing their own systems against the newest weapons.
Exactly.
And resources like the Insights blog and Fraud magazine seem to operate on an even faster timeline.
Much faster.
I imagine those as dispatch channels from the front lines. Like
Yeah.
someone in Europe uncovers a new variation of a payroll scam on a Monday, the ACFE network publishes the mechanics of it, and a CFE in Tokyo is auditing for that exact vulnerability by Thursday.
The speed of information sharing is literally the only way to counter the speed of the threat. The recertification process ensures that the CFE credential actually carries a guarantee of current relevance.
Right.
When a board of directors hires a CFE, they aren't hiring a historical record of how fraud used to work in 2015. They're plugging their company into a live global intelligence network.
It's an antivirus analogy again.
Exactly.
You don't install a security patch in 2018 and assume your servers are safe today. The system has to constantly pull the new virus definitions from the central hub.
Yeah.
But, an intelligence network is only as effective as the human beings plugged into it interpreting the data.
And the human element here is just staggering in its scale.
It really is. The sources note that the ACFE boasts more than 95,000 members worldwide.
That's a massive, localized army of fraud fighters.
And what really stands out in the material is the diverse backgrounds of these people and where they actually operate.
Right.
Because when I think of high-level financial fraud, my brain defaults to Wall Street. Offshore accounts, hedge funds, massive banking conglomerates.
Of course, that's what we see in movies.
Yeah. But the ACFE highlights members from entirely different sectors, spanning nearly every industry.
Because the ubiquity of their credential is one of its most critical features. And the sources actually feature a really good testimonial from Patrick J. McGowan.
Right. He's a lawyer, a JD, who earned his CFE.
Exactly. And he doesn't work on Wall Street. He works in risk management and compliance within the manufacturing industry.
In Farmington, Connecticut, right.
Yes, Farmington.
Which totally shatters the stereotype of the corporate investigator in a slick Manhattan office. But it raises a question. Why manufacturing?
What do you mean?
Well, it seems like an industry focused on physical goods, not necessarily complex financial instruments. What is a CFE actually looking for on a factory floor in Connecticut? Does this credential pigeonhole you into a basement looking at receipts?
This raises an important question about the nature of fraud itself. Basically, if money is moving, it is vulnerable to manipulation.
A fair point.
In manufacturing, the threat landscape is heavily focused on the supply chain. I mean, you're dealing with raw materials, massive procurement budgets, and hundreds of external vendors.
So a lot of money changing hands constantly.
Exactly. It is incredibly common to see mechanisms like phantom vendors or procurement scams in these environments.
Okay, let's pause and break that down, because phantom vendor sounds like a corporate buzzword, but it represents actual theft.
Very real theft.
Walk me through how a phantom vendor operates mechanically.
Okay, so it relies entirely on insider access. An employee in, let's say, the procurement or accounting department decides they want to steal.
Okay.
So they go into the company's accounting software and they just create a fictitious company, a phantom vendor. They assign it a realistic name, a billing address, and crucially, a bank account, which they secretly control.
So the automated system now recognizes this fake entity as a completely legitimate business partner.
Right. Then the employee starts generating fake invoices from this phantom vendor for goods or services that obviously were never actually delivered.
Because it's a ghost.
Exactly. But because the employee already has the authority within the system, they just approve their own fake invoice.
Wow.
The company's automated systems cut a check or initiate a wire transfer, and the money flows straight into the employee's shell account.
And to an outside observer, or even a traditional auditor, it just looks like the company paid for a routine shipment of, I don't know, ball bearings.
Yep. The math balances perfectly.
It balances perfectly.
This is exactly where those 4 CFE pillars activate, though.
Okay, map it out for me.
Well, the CFE has to understand the complex transaction, how the money actually flows through the procurement software.
Right.
That's pillar 1.
Right.
Then they use investigative techniques, pillar 2, to trace the IP addresses used to approve the invoices, or they cross-reference the vendor's address and find out it's actually just a residential P.O. box.
So they find the rot behind the drywall.
Exactly. Then they resolve the allegation, pillar 3, by securing the digital server logs before the employee can delete them, ensuring the evidence holds up for law enforcement.
So the case doesn't get thrown out.
Right. And finally, they design an anti-fraud program, pillar 4. Perhaps instituting a rule that the person who adds a new vendor to the system cannot be the same person who approves payments to that vendor.
Oh, separation of duties.
Yeah.
You literally engineer the vulnerability out of the system.
Exactly. And it's the exact same fundamental operating system applied to a completely different industry.
That's fascinating.
Whether it's a phantom vendor in Connecticut or billing fraud at a regional hospital or inflated metrics at a Silicon Valley tech startup, the mechanics of the deception might change, but the methodology to unravel it remains constant.
Which really explains why the ACFE places such a heavy emphasis on the entire career life cycle of its members.
Oh, absolutely.
The source material outlines resources for basically every stage of a professional's journey. They have specific pathways for those just starting out, resources for the newly self-employed, and programs for those making a career change.
And going back to Patrick McGowan, he actually noted that he landed his dream job via the ACFE job board, and now he encourages his whole team to get the credential.
It proves the credential isn't a silo that traps you in one specific job role.
No, it's highly adaptable. You can shift paths entirely.
Yeah.
You might start your career investigating internal corporate fraud at a logistics company.
Right?
Then, using the ACFE job board, you could transition into government compliance, analyzing systemic waste.
Or leverage the ACFE mentoring program to become self-employed.
Exactly, offering bespoke risk management to smaller businesses.
Yeah.
You can even use it to, as the sources say, leave a legacy.
And the infrastructure is even reaching backward into the education system, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, the ACFE Foundation.
Right. It's a nonprofit arm that specifically supports students who are pursuing careers in fraud examination. So they're actively cultivating the next generation of these professionals while they're still in school.
And honestly, they have to. The demand for this specific hybrid skill set is accelerating because business itself is accelerating.
What do you mean?
Well, as commerce becomes increasingly digitized and globalized, the attack surface just keeps expanding. Every time a company adopts a new payment processing system or expands into a new international market or automates a supply chain, they create new blind spots.
And the fraudsters are just waiting in those blind spots?
Always. It is a perpetual arms race. The ACFE recognizes that they cannot just train professionals for the landscape of today. They have to prepare them to investigate the systems of tomorrow.
Wow. Let's pull all of these threads together because the picture we've painted of this subculture completely upends how we traditionally view corporate security.
It really does.
We started by looking at the CFE credential, expecting a rigid, boring accounting syllabus. Instead, we found a blueprint for a professional who operates at the intersection of finance, law, investigation, and system architecture.
And it's the mastery of those four pillars that allows them to see through the camouflage of balanced ledgers and manufactured compliance.
And they don't operate in a vacuum. They are constantly fed intelligence by the ACFE's global network. Tools like the 2024 report to the nations and the Insights blog function as a live feed of criminal innovation,
Ensuring that their defense strategies mutate just as fast as the threats.
which all culminates in a 95,000-member global community. Professionals taking this universal operating system of fraud detection and applying it to manufacturing plants, healthcare networks, and tech giants, effectively guarding the foundations of the global economy.
It's a massive undertaking.
It's a fascinating reality check. And, for you listening right now, understanding this framework really changes how you perceive the safety of the corporate systems around you.
Definitely.
If you're a business owner wanting to safeguard your assets, you suddenly realize that passive compliance isn't enough. You need active investigation.
Right.
If you're looking to make a career change, maybe checking out that ACFE job board. This entire ecosystem exists to support a path that merges deep analytical thinking with high-stakes problem solving.
It's a very dynamic career.
Or if you're just a curious mind fascinated by how complex deception is unraveled, you now understand the sheer level of sophisticated effort required to uncover it. The financial X-ray might be intentionally blurry, but there is an entire global task force trained to read the shadows.
And that reality leaves us with a pretty heavy, lingering question to ponder.
Oh.
Well, the one absolute truth in these source materials is that fraud is ever evolving. It never remains static.
Right, it's always adapting.
So if it currently takes a dedicated, highly trained global army of 95,000 continuously educated professionals just to keep pace with the deception happening today, what does the next generation of deception actually look like?
That's a scary thought.
As we introduce artificial intelligence and fully automated financial systems into the core of our businesses, the speed of transactions will outpace human observation entirely. So as you go about your week, Look at the digital infrastructure and the financial transactions you trust implicitly every single day and ask yourself how vulnerable are those systems to a threat that is constantly, intelligently adapting.
It certainly forces you to wonder who is auditing the algorithms we rely on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.